Minasan, konnichiwa. Welcome to my channel Nihonno Neko. I'm Daria and here we talk all about Japanese language learning. Now, I know a lot of you have a dream or goal of living or studying in Japan. But I thought it would be curious to see the other side of this. Why and how would a Japanese person live in the United States? And for that, we turn to Ryoji. Let's hear what he has to say. Ryoji-san,
はい、こんにちは。
日本の猫のチャンネルにようこそ。First question I have, how did it come about you moving to the United States? My understanding is that that happened actually many years ago.
Long time ago. So, I came to the US for the first time when I was 17 as an exchange student.
Okay.
That's when I was in high school. And they had, in the city that I was living, they had a program to send students during summertime to Sacramento, California. And I entered the program and I was chosen. And I was like one of the 12 students that was chosen, and I got to come to California for the first time when I was 17, and I fell in love with it.
Well, California is definitely a great place to go to, even within the United States. And so, did you end up like living after that, or?
So that was only a short time. It was about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And after that, I went back to Japan and I finished high school. But when I came back, I was like already determined to come back to the US. Because I was like, wow, it's like it was my first time visiting a foreign country.
Okay.
And it just changed my whole perspective in my life. I was like, only thing I knew was Japan.
Right.
But there's a whole world out there that I didn't know, and I saw it with my own eyes, and I was like, wow, I want to live here. That was my first impression.
Right. No, I can definitely relate to that. As someone who's not from the US myself. But what was the most thing that like impressed you, or maybe shocked you on the other hand?
There was nothing that really shocked me, because I almost felt like I was in a movie.
Okay.
Because we watch a lot of Western movies, American movies, and we see people with blonde hair, green eyes, and that's my image of Americans. But the only thing I was shocked was that there weren't that many blonde people. There were a lot of people with brown hair, black hairs. And I was like, oh, I thought all Americans were blonde and yeah, blue eyes, and that's what I thought like growing up. That was my image of Americans.
Okay.
So I started to see more Asians here, a lot of Latinos, and really like a mixed up race.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Especially like if you're coming from just watching Western movies. Well, now things I think change, and they really try to, in Hollywood, they really try to represent
Right.
more people, and that is really awesome. But back like some, I don't know, even 10 years ago, some movies you're watching like male, white male, white male, white male, white male,
Right,
oh, white
right.
woman, male,
Right.
So I can definitely see that.
Right.
What was the thing that really like sparked you and amazed you? Well, throughout your living experience in US, not necessarily the first time.
I think living here, like you can be yourself. Well, at least my experience.
Right.
So you don't really have to think about what others think of you. And that's one thing that I didn't like about living in Japan, that you are always like being watched or being judged by other people. And you have to kind of live your life that certain way, the way that parents want you to live, or your family expects you to live. And that was kind of hard for me.
Yeah.
So after coming to the US, it's like you can do anything you want and you can do anything, but then nobody judges you. So that was like one thing that I was really surprised. That, you know, it's kind of like you can feel free.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I remember, you know, when I traveled to Japan, and I really love Japan till this day, but I remember having this feeling, which I think for as a foreigner is a little different, especially well, at that time I had like red hair, so I was also very standing out a lot. So you can always feel that everyone is like watching you all the time because you're a foreigner. But I imagine
Right.
on the flip side, as a Japanese person, you experience opposite, where people have even higher bar for you, because as a foreigner you can kind of get away with certain things because you're a foreigner, but as a Japanese you're expected to have all of these things perfectly. If you don't, then you don't have it.
Luckily in California we have a lot of Asian people live here, so I was never like, you know, stared by people. But when I went to Yosemite, there were not many Japanese or Asians out there, and then I kind of noticed that people were like looking at me.
Who is he?
Like, oh, there's a
this
an Asian person. Yeah. But living in California, it's like, you know, there's so many Asians here, so I feel like, you know, this is my home.
Do you have a lot of like a big Japanese community there?
There is. So like when I first came here back in like 1990s, the community was bigger, but there are a lot of Chinese and Korean immigrants that are starting to come to the Japanese town, and then they're buying, you know, a lot of businesses. So the Japanese town is changing. So we have a place called Little Tokyo. There's a little area that, you know, we have Japanese restaurants, Japanese stores, you know, grocery stores. You can buy some, you know, Japanese anime stuff, but it's very tiny.
Well, it's great that you know you have it in the first place. Like I live in Charlotte, and here we have one Japanese store, one like overall Asian store, but often they have like Korean and Chinese stuff rather than Japanese, and one specifically Japanese store. And then, but I remember when I traveled to San Francisco, they also have like Nippon Town, I think it's called.
Yeah.
With a lot of like, this like almost feels like you're living in Japan, like in this very small district. So I think it's just really important for people to understand that I mean, going to Japan is obviously great, but you don't have to go to Japan to like experience some of the same stuff. You know, you can have some. You can go to the Japanese grocery store. You can buy anime here. Like, you can meet Japanese people at the meetups and all of that. So I really want to drive this point to people that like to experience Japanese culture. Just look around yourself. Don't think that's only going to Japan will, you know, satisfy that.
Right. So a lot of people, like, you know, say that, oh, they can't find any Japanese speakers to practice Japanese. But if you go to those places, there are lots of, you know, tourists there that you can, you know, say hi and, you know, start a conversation. And, you know, of course, the shop people, they're Japanese, so you can, you know, try your Japanese skill. You know, say konnichiwa, you know, and then they're gonna be, you know, nice to you. Then they're gonna start talking to you in Japanese.
Yeah. I think Japanese people are always impressed when you try to speak Japanese, and so they're always happy to help.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And so now that you live in the US for so many years, how did your perception of like Japan and Japanese culture changed?
You know, like when I was younger, like when I left, I just wanted to get out. And I wanted to, you know, try something different. And I never like kind of looked back. And so for my, you know, study, I wanted to improve my English. And I stopped watching all Japanese TVs. I stopped, you know, doing anything Japanese, you know, just to separate myself so I can immerse myself in American culture. And now that, you know, I started teaching Japanese and I looked at, some foreigners, they love Japan, they love Japanese culture, and I feel very honored that they love Japan and Japanese culture, and I feel like Japan is such a great country, and I'm very proud to be Japanese.
Yeah, I feel like so many times when, and myself including, when I was traveling first time to like overseas country and seeing so different and so open and so free also, for me that was new even compared to Ukraine where I'm from. Like you almost want to say that, oh, everything about like Western countries is good and everything about your country is bad, but then after a while you start understanding that, well, there's bad and good everywhere. No matter where you live, it's just, comes with the trade-offs. Like in the United States, yes, we have all this freedom and it's obviously great and I'm enjoying it too, but at the same time, there's some kind of issue that come with it, which I don't want to get into too much, but definitely I can see that. And so on this, in this topic, like when you came to US for the first time as a 17-year-old, did you know any English? How was your English learning journey?
So we learned English for about 6 years in Japanese school system. So I had my basics done, but I wasn't able to like make any long sentences, so it was like very short. I could say like I'm hungry, I want to eat something, but other than
Basic
that,
survival.
I couldn't really say anything. So, and then the simplest things like I remember I was telling my host family that I wanted to throw away something because I had trash in my hand, but I didn't know how to say throw away, so I was like trash. That's all I could say it. And then the funny thing was when I was playing with some small kids, they told me to say this one word to this one kid, and they say, okay, Ryoji, say this word, get lost. And I didn't know what it meant. So I said get lost to this one kid, and then the kid started crying. I was like, oh, what did I say? Because I had no idea what get lost mean. So and I said it, and then later I asked one of them, so what did that mean? And then they're like, oh, that means to like go away. I was like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, definitely language learning journey, you can it is great, and as a being able to speak fluently other language than your own is really like fascinating, but at the same time there are definitely some funny moments in the process. But so when you went to study, right? So did you study in English? How was that, like, given the fact that you weren't that proficient with English at the time?
So when I went to English school, the first day I was like very overwhelmed because you came here to learn English, but all the classes were in English, and then I'm like, okay, like I don't understand like maybe 80% of what the teacher was saying, and I'm like looking around, it's like, is everyone understanding what's happening? From that point, like the day one, I was like, okay, so this is the reality that I'm facing. I gotta, change up, my gears, and I have to really start studying. So, and then from that point, I was like studying every day. I stopped, watching anything Japanese, and I started to think in English, and it's a process. Like you have to practice every day. And
did you have any specific like technique that you used, and how did you continue with your study when you went back to Japan?
So back then we didn't have internet yet. So the thing that I was using was this English learning kit or course that you can buy, and they'll send you a cassette tape. It wasn't even CD. It was a cassette tape, and then they'll send you one cassette tape a month, and then you have to like listen to it like over and over, and then you do shadowing, and then you answer questions. and I was doing
Right.
that a lot. The funny thing is that when you remember or when you memorize those small phrases that you do over and over, sometimes like you memorize it but you don't know what it means. But then later on when you study, sometimes like those things click.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, that's what it meant. It's like you've been saying it over and over, and then you later find out what actually means.
Yeah.
And then-
Or sometimes I feel like sometimes you kind of know what it means, but you're not sure what exact situation would you use it
Right.
in. Like
Yeah.
you kind of know, but you don't know really how to use it properly, and then you hear someone saying it for like a movie or something. Like, oh,
Right.
that's what I'm for.
Yeah. So I think like learning a language, you have to know the situation or when to use those phrases, and you can't just learn from books. You have to really experience, when to use it, how it's
Definitely.
used, and then when that all together, it clicks. It's like, oh, that's how you use it. That's when you use it.
Definitely.
I think that's very important.
And like going back to what you said before, like get lost. It's not something you would necessarily see in a textbook, and it's hard
Right.
sometimes to like just from two words, because especially with English, again, it's like has so many variations depending on what it
Yeah.
is. So, like those type of things really like comes from experience.
Mhm.
And do you have any advice for people who are learning, well, I guess Japanese or English, how to better master the language?
So I think Japanese is really challenging because we have three different writing systems. We have the hiragana, katakana, and
Right.
kanji, and I think a lot of students struggle with kanji because it's not easy. It doesn't come really easy. Even Japanese, we study kanji for over like 9-10 years, and we still struggle. We can read them, but when it comes to like writing them, we have hard time remembering. And now with the technology of the phone
When
and
you
the
don't
computer,
have to write,
you don't
like actually
right.
use your hands. Yeah.
So it's like when we were growing up, we had to write each Chinese characters kanji for at least 100 times. Yeah, to memorize. So like, and then the funny thing is I'm left-handed, but in Japanese school system, like when I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to use my
no.
left hand.
Is it still that way?
So my teacher will like,
Do you know?
that I don't know, but at
Alright.
least when I was growing up. Yeah, so I had to correct myself to use right hand. So I learned to write with my right hand, but I can now use my left and right. So when I do kanji practice, and then your hands get tired.
You can just
So
switch hands.
sometimes
and you're good.
I switch hands. Yeah, so I can do twice as many.
Wow. That's a great advantage. I heard something that like when you practice both hands, then your brain development really like accelerates. It's
Right.
not just hands.
So the funny thing is that funny that you should say that. When I studied language, I was using my
Right.
left hand to stimulate the different parts of the brain, and for like certain subject I use my right hand, and for language I was using my left hand. So I don't know if that might have helped.
Well, that was certainly very interesting. Do you have any parting words that you wanted to tell our viewers?
Well, I think language learning is there. I don't think there is a goal. So it's like if you study up to this, like you're all finished.
Right.
And language learning just continues. Like once you hit certain point, you should aim higher,
Definitely.
and then it keeps on going. So there's like you hear a lot of times. Learn Japanese in 3 months. Learn English in
What that's
2
supposed
months.
to mean.
Yeah. So it doesn't happen that way. It's a process. It's every day you have to practice, and you have to kind of experience different situations, and you have to learn those how you say things in different situations. That's how you learn language. And I think you can't learn a language from textbooks. You have to learn language from real conversation.
Right.
Yeah, communication, interaction with people. That's how you learn. So hopefully, what I do on my Instagram and my YouTube are helping students to learn Japanese. And I would like to create more fun stuff, more informative things, so that students can learn Japanese more fun way.
Definitely, and we're gonna link to Ryoji's Instagram and his YouTube channel in the description below. Make sure to check this out. Thank you so much for your interview, Ryoji.
ありがとう。
What a curious conversation. What was the biggest surprise for you? And would you want to have more videos like this, interview style, from me? Let me know in the comments below. Now, next time we're gonna explore one grammar structure that Japanese people use daily, and yet as language learners we often struggle to use it properly and enough. And that is te kureru and te morau. So if you're interested in that, then you know what to do. Hit notification bell not to miss this video next week. I'm Daria, I have a video every Sunday for you, and until then, ja ne!